Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I knew something was wrong the moment she said it without even looking at me. She stood by the sink with her Starbucks cup half empty and told the room we weren't physical anymore because I didn't try hard enough. She didn't say it with anger. She said it like a conclusion she'd rehearsed. I didn't answer at first. I just watched her scroll her phone with that distant half smile she used when talking to someone who wasn't me. When she finally glanced up, I told her the truth as calmly as a man stating inventory numbers. I stopped trying when rejection became routine. The words didn't raise my voice, but they raised something else: her eyebrows, her guard, her distance. She walked out of the kitchen like I'd inconvenienced her. Like I was the problem she didn't want to troubleshoot. But the real beginning wasn't that morning. It started 2 months earlier, the day she sold that old dining table on Facebook Marketplace. I remember hearing her laugh, soft, unfamiliar, at something the buyer messaged. His name was Tyler. She said he was friendly for a stranger. She said it like that was rare. I didn't think much of it at the time. People buy furniture. People talk. People move on. Except she didn't move on. It started with, "Thanks again for the pickup." Then, "Let me know if you need help assembling the replacement." Then photos of options. Then jokes about how she lived in her Nike leggings like they were a personality trait. Then messages on the way back from Costco. Each one harmless if you looked at them alone. Not harmless at all when you line them up. I first noticed the shift the night she ignored our usual show on Hulu to answer someone with unreadable intensity. She tucked her phone into her lap the moment I walked into the room. She never used to hide anything. She never used to guard her screen like it contained oxygen. I remember sitting there, watching the reflection of her smile glow off the dark TV screen. That was the first time I felt the floor tilt under us. Not because she'd met someone better, because she'd met someone who made her feel noticed. And I was just the man who didn't try hard enough. I didn't go looking for proof. It came looking for me in small, careless moments she didn't think I'd notice. The first one happened on a Tuesday afternoon when I walked past her office door and heard her laugh, the kind that didn't belong to our house anymore. When she realized I'd heard it, she instantly straightened and said it was just a client message. But she angled her phone away like the screen carried a secret. Later that night, she posted a story about decluttering weekends and tagged nothing, but the table she sold on Facebook Marketplace was in the background, freshly missing. The empty space felt staged, like she wanted someone specific to notice it. The second moment came when she left for a quick Costco run. Those trips used to take 30 minutes. That day it took 3 hours. When she returned, she wore her usual Nike leggings and a smile she hid the moment she saw me. She set bags on the counter with shaky hands, laughing too loudly at nothing, and said the lines were long. I didn't question it. I didn't accuse. I just stepped aside and let her unpack in silence. But when her phone buzzed and she snatched it before the screen lit, I saw the faintest reflection of a name she'd never mentioned. Tyler. That night, I watched her pretend to relax on the couch. Hulu asked if she wanted to continue our usual show. She didn't. She sat there scrolling, not touching me, not looking at me, not noticing how still I'd become. Her thumb moved too fast, too eager. She kept tilting the screen away, as if the glow might give away more than the words. When she went to bed early, I stayed in the kitchen, staring at the empty space where the old table used to stand. It wasn't about furniture. It was about entry points. About how easily someone could slip into a life if the door was cracked open just an inch. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask who he was. I simply felt something shift inside me. Something steady, rising quietly, like a man bracing for a truth he already knew was coming. The day everything snapped into focus was a Thursday. Ordinary in every way except for the way she moved around the house. Too light on her feet, too careful with her expressions. She had that glow people get when they're already halfway somewhere else. I watched her linger by the mirror longer than usual, smoothing her hair, checking her phone, typing, deleting, typing again. She wasn't getting ready for me. She wasn't even present enough to pretend. When she left for another quick Costco pickup, she didn't know I was still in the driveway, sitting in my car, waiting a full minute before following her route at a distance. I didn't trail her like a detective. I simply wanted truth, clean and unfiltered. I kept far enough back to avoid attention, close enough to know exactly where she was going. She didn't turn toward Costco. She pulled into a small residential street 2 blocks away, parked near a row of old ranch-style houses, and waited with both hands on the wheel. I watched her inhale slowly, check her makeup in the rear view, then glance at her phone. A moment later, a man walked up to her window carrying a tool bag and a casual confidence that didn't match his work boots. I recognized him instantly from the Facebook Marketplace profile picture. Tyler, the talkative buyer, who suddenly had a reason to message her long after the table sale was done. She stepped out of the car, not close enough to touch him, but close enough for the air between them to do the work. He laughed at something she said, that easy kind of laugh that comes from someone who has nothing to lose. She tilted her head the way she used to tilt it with me when we first started dating, before routine replaced discovery. I didn't get out. I didn't interrupt. I didn't make a scene. I watched silently, letting the facts settle inside me like pieces clicking into place. Every Costco trip, every late-night message, every moment she angled her phone away. It wasn't mystery anymore. It was pattern. When she returned home later, she dropped the Starbucks cup in the trash and acted surprised to see me already in the living room. She said the lines were terrible. She said she'd rushed. She said nothing that mattered. I didn't call her out. I didn't break the moment. I just looked at her once, quiet, steady, and colder than she'd ever seen me, and watched her flinch at a truth I hadn't even spoken yet. I didn't confront her the next day. I didn't ask why she lied, or where she'd really been, or what Tyler meant to her. Instead, I woke earlier than usual, dressed in complete silence, and walked out before her alarm began its soft vibration on the nightstand. My Chevy Silverado sat in the driveway under the street lamps, steady and unbothered, and when I turned the engine on, it felt like the rhythm of my life shifted with it. That was the only time I ever named the truck. After that, it was just the car, the place where her reach couldn't follow. I drove without destination for nearly an hour, letting the morning darkness cut the last threads of expectation. By the time she stepped into the kitchen holding her usual Starbucks cup, I was already halfway across the city, settling into a pace that didn't include her anymore. At work, I stayed in motion. Meetings, calls, planning sessions, everything I used to slow down for, I now moved through with a clarity she hadn't seen in years. When my phone buzzed around lunchtime, I let it ring until it died out. She called again. Then again. A text popped up, something short, something clipped, something she probably crafted while pacing the living room where Hulu usually played in the background. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. When I finally returned home that evening, the house felt strangely organized, like she had spent hours trying to reassemble fairness or control. She stood in the hallway wearing those same Nike leggings, arms folded, face tight, with something between confusion and panic. She asked why I'd left so early. She asked if something was wrong. She asked why I felt distant. She asked everything except the one question that mattered. I didn't answer. I walked past her, hung my jacket, and let the silence say what I wasn't going to spell out for her. She followed me into the kitchen, quieter now, almost unsure. She reached for my arm but stopped halfway, as if afraid of what she'd feel when I didn't turn toward her. The distance she once created was finally standing between us, but this time, it belonged to me. The shift in her behavior came faster than I expected. By the 5th day of my new schedule, she was unraveling in ways she didn't understand. She kept trying to pull me back into the version of our life where she set the rhythm and I adjusted. But I wasn't adjusting anymore. I woke before dawn, left without noise, returned without explanation, and moved through the house like someone who no longer needed permission to breathe. She noticed the change before she admitted it. She lingered in doorways, watching me lace my boots, watching me check my calendar, watching me close the door behind me without the usual goodbye. It wasn't cruelty. It was clarity, the kind she'd never expected from me. One evening, I walked into the living room and found her sitting on the couch with the TV off. Hulu's home screen glowed faintly, the cursor blinking, untouched. She looked like she'd been waiting there for hours and didn't know how to start a conversation that might expose everything she'd been hiding. When I passed through the room, she straightened as if preparing for impact. She said she felt like I was avoiding her. She said the house felt different. She said she wanted to talk. Her voice was steady at first, then wavered slightly when she realized I wasn't slowing down or turning toward her. I didn't respond. I moved to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and took my time. She followed me reluctantly, wearing those Nike leggings she'd started choosing every time she needed to step out for a bit. She waited for me to ask where she'd been. I didn't. She set her phone on the counter, screen up for once, almost like she wanted to prove something. But even from across the room, I could see the way her eyes flicked toward it, twice, 3 times, waiting for a message that didn't arrive. Maybe he hadn't answered. Maybe he was working. Maybe he felt her slipping too. I walked past her and sat at the dining table. She hovered behind me, unsure, grasping at silence she didn't know how to interpret. She was no longer hiding her anxiety. And for the first time, she wasn't worried about losing my affection. She was worried about losing access. The social hit came quietly, almost politely, the way truth usually does in circles that pay attention to everything except what matters. It started when I stopped covering for her, without saying a word, without exposing anything, without trying to protect the image she'd spent years curating. I simply removed my presence from the spaces where she relied on me to steady her reputation. And people noticed the absence immediately. At her cousin's birthday gathering, I arrived late and stayed near the back patio, talking with her uncles about work and supply chains. When she finally walked in, she scanned the room for me with practiced confidence. But when she saw the distance I kept, physical and emotional, it broke her timing. She hesitated mid-step, then forced a smile that didn't land on anyone. Her aunt approached her first, gently, with the kind of tact older women use when they already know the answer. She asked if everything was fine at home. Not nosy, just curious. My wife brushed it off with a laugh that fell flat. She tried to redirect the conversation, but her aunt's eyes drifted toward me, standing alone, clearly not orbiting the way I used to. It wasn't suspicious, it was noticeable. Later, near the kitchen island, I overheard her cousin mentioning how she'd been out and about a lot lately, especially on those long trips to Costco. Another relative chimed in, saying she'd seen her parked in a neighborhood far from any shopping area. No accusations, no harsh tones, just small comments that cut through her composure like thin paper. She glanced my way again, expecting me to step in, smooth things over, shield her from any awkwardness. I didn't move. I didn't offer a look, a nod, or a lifeline. I just stayed exactly where I was, sipping water and answering questions about work like nothing in my world was out of place. For the first time, she felt the strain of standing alone. When we got home, she lingered by the doorway, waiting for me to say something, anything, that would pull her back into the center of my attention. Instead, I walked past her, set my keys down, and started loading the dishwasher. She watched me the way someone watches a door that's closing too quietly to stop. Her isolation didn't arrive with shouting or confrontation. It arrived in the quiet moments she never thought would matter. I started coming home later, not out of spite, but because the car had become the only place where my thoughts didn't feel interrupted. I'd sit in the driveway for 10, sometimes 15 minutes, watching the house lights glow behind the curtains. She used to wait for me at the door. Now she hovered somewhere inside, unsure whether she should come out or pretend she wasn't watching. When I finally stepped in, she was usually standing in the living room, pretending to scroll but not touching anything on her screen. Hulu would be paused, not because she'd been watching it, but because she didn't know what to do with her hands. She looked smaller in those moments, like the stillness of the room made her nervous. She'd ask if I'd eaten. I'd nod. She'd ask how work was. I'd say fine. Nothing rude. Nothing sharp. Just trimmed-down responses that didn't invite more. She followed me more now. When I walked down the hallway, she drifted behind me like a shadow out of rhythm. She lingered near the bedroom doorway as I changed, and her eyes tried to catch mine with a softness that used to come naturally. But every time she reached for some emotional cue, she found a wall instead. Not anger, just neutrality. A version of me she'd never had to face because she'd always assumed she controlled the emotional temperature. One night, she sat on the kitchen stool in her Nike leggings, elbows on the counter, head low. She wasn't pretending anymore. She asked the room why I wouldn't talk to her. Not to accuse, just to understand the silence that now lived between us. I didn't answer. I rinsed my glass, set it on the rack, and walked out to the car. She followed me to the doorway, stopping just shy of stepping outside, like she was afraid I'd keep walking if she pushed her luck. She didn't know this kind of distance. She didn't know the version of me that no longer waited to be chosen. And now, for the first time, she felt completely alone in a house she used to command without effort. The confrontation didn't come with shouting. It came with a kind of trembling restraint she wasn't used to feeling. It was late, later than I usually got home, and when I stepped through the door, she was already waiting in the hallway. No lights on, no Hulu humming in the background. Just her, standing completely still, like she'd been there long enough for the silence to settle into her bones. I walked past her, heading toward the kitchen, when she finally spoke. Her voice wasn't sharp. It wasn't angry. It was thin, stretched, like she'd been holding it in too long. She said she felt like I was pulling away, like something in the house had shifted off its axis. She said she missed me, and the words sounded foreign even to her, as if they scraped against the truth she'd been avoiding. I didn't turn around. I opened the fridge, took a bottle of water, and let the quiet fill the space she thought she controlled. She followed me into the kitchen, slower this time, almost cautious. She stood there in her worn Nike leggings, arms wrapped around herself like she needed protection from the cold I wasn't directing at her. It was just who I'd become. She told the room she didn't understand why I didn't try anymore, why I didn't reach for her, why I didn't want to fix whatever was broken. I didn't answer, not because I didn't have words, but because she already knew them. She just didn't want to face the version of me who no longer chased her attention, the version she created. She stepped closer, testing the distance, searching my face for something familiar. She reached out, not a hug, not a demand, just fingertips brushing my arm like she wanted to check if I was still real. I didn't move. I let her hand fall on its own. Her eyes changed then. Something in her cracked, not dramatically, not loudly, but in the quiet way someone realizes the person they assumed would always be soft has turned into something unreachable. When I walked toward the back door to sit in my car, she whispered that she felt like she was losing me. I didn't look back. She wasn't losing me. She'd stopped having access to me the moment she gave her attention to a stranger from Facebook Marketplace. Her collapse didn't look dramatic. It looked like a woman losing her grip one silent inch at a time. I watched it happen the way I watch operational failures at work. Patterns, small deviations, systems faltering before they fall. She woke earlier than usual, drifting through the house like she was trying to catch up to a life that no longer matched her pace. She walked past the mirror without checking her reflection. She made coffee but forgot to drink it. She picked up her phone, set it down, picked it up again. Nothing came through. No messages. No late notifications. Not even from the man she'd given pieces of herself to in parking lots and quick stops on the way from Costco. By midweek, she wasn't pretending anymore. She sat at the dining table in her oversized sweater, staring at the empty space where the old table once stood. The one she sold. The one that opened the door. It was almost poetic that she kept looking at that patch of floor like it might explain what was happening to her. I came home after dark that night. She was on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, Hulu paused on a loading screen she hadn't bothered to watch. When she looked up at me, there was no hostility, no defensiveness, no indignation. Just the stunned expression of someone who finally understood consequences. She whispered into the quiet that she didn't know how we got here. She said she felt like she was fading inside her own home. She said she didn't recognize me anymore. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from holding it back. I stood in the doorway, watching her stare into the kind of emptiness she once pushed me into. She had all the space she'd carved out between us, just not the person she expected to fill it. She reached for her phone again, then set it down like it burned. I could see it in her posture, in the way her shoulders caved. He wasn't answering. Or he drifted. Or he'd lost interest now that the chase was gone. She wasn't anybody's priority. When I walked past her, she whispered that she felt like she was disappearing. She wasn't disappearing. She was finally facing the silence she built with her own hands. The final break didn't happen during a fight. It happened on a morning so still it felt staged. I woke before sunrise, the way I had for weeks, and walked into the kitchen to grab my keys. She was already there, sitting at the table in the same sweater she'd slept in, hands clasped like she was holding something fragile that kept slipping through her fingers. A cold Starbucks cup sat untouched beside her. She didn't even try to hide the fact that she'd been waiting for me. I stopped by the doorway, not out of hesitation, but because the silence carried a weight even I wasn't expecting. She lifted her eyes slowly, the way people do when they don't know if the person standing in front of them is still theirs. There was no anger left in her. No excuses. Just a kind of tired truth that didn't need words. She said I wasn't the same man. Not an accusation, an observation. She said I felt distant, unreachable, redesigned into someone she couldn't read anymore. She admitted she didn't know how to talk to me now. She didn't apologize. She didn't confess. She didn't explain. Maybe because she knew explanations would insult both of us. I sat across from her, keeping the distance between us intact. She searched my face with the desperation of someone trying to recognize a place they'd abandoned too long. She said she missed who we used to be. She said she felt scared. She said she didn't know how everything slipped so far. I let her speak. I didn't interrupt. When she finally fell quiet, I told her the only truth that mattered, that I didn't pull away first. I just stopped trying to restore what she had already given to someone else in pieces. Her breath shook, and she looked down at the table like she expected to see the old one, the one she had sold on Facebook Marketplace, still grounding the room. But there was nothing there. Just space. I stood, grabbed my jacket, and walked toward the door. She asked, barely audible, if this meant I was leaving for good. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Some losses announced themselves in silence. And once that silence settles, nothing in the house sounds like home anymore. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.